In this step, you'll need your 3mm Allen key, 2 anti-twist plates, 6 M5x8 button head bolts, 6 M5 channel nuts, your 2 20mm spacers, 2 M5x70 cap head bolts, your 2020 RX1 and 2020 RX2. Note that one of them has the hole through the flat face and the other one has a hole through both open faces. Your foam vent pack, the longer piece, and your 2020 RM. These are the longest pieces of metal with threading in both ends. Start by taking 2020 RX2, this is the one with the larger hole through the closed face, and then push M5x70s through the closed face. The heads should sit down in the larger hole. Then over the open side of the bolts, slot the 20mm spacers. Make sure the closed face is facing upwards towards you. In between the two spacers, you can slot the foam vent pack. It doesn't matter which way this goes, it works either way. Then, over the open faces of the bolts, slot in 2020 RX1, matching the closed face of the 20mm spacers you put on before. Place the 1388 2020 RMs over the top of the bolts, and then thread them in a little bit on each just to get them going. Then, once they're both threaded on a tad, tighten. Once it's tightened, turn your piece over so you have the open faces facing upwards towards you, and slot in 4 channel nuts into the upper crossbar. The other 2 channel nuts will go one piece in each side of the 2020 RM. They're the long pieces that you've just tightened into. Slot them all down onto the corner so you have 3 around each join. This is where we'll be fitting the anti-twist plate. To fit the anti-twist plate, put it roughly into position and put M5x8 button head bolts into each of the channel nuts, and then slot them into the gaps and then tighten them in place. In this step, you're going to need the rear frame that you've just made, your small foam vent pack, so the 2 small pieces out of the foam vent pack, your 3mm Allen key, and then the side assemblies that you made earlier. Start by slotting the 2 small foam panels into the open slots in the bottom of the rear frame. Then, with the long side on the back, slot over the side assemblies over the rear side assembly bolts. So there should be 2 little bolts in those crossbars that you put onto the rear assembly earlier. Then you can tighten them through the holes on each side. Complete this for both sides. Then take your large black rear panel and you're going to slot this between the 2 central upright poles on the rear of your greenhouse. Make sure the orientation matches as shown here with the big open rectangle. In this step you'll need your S8 ROP, so they're the thinner black foam panels, and your 2020 RX1. You should only have one of these left. Start by slotting in each S8 ROP into the slots in the left and right hand side of your greenhouse. Doesn't matter which way they go, it doesn't make a difference with how the greenhouse goes together. Then fit over the 2020 RX1 over the top of these, with the closed face facing backwards as if you're looking at it from the front of the greenhouse. Once it's there, you can tighten it down through the bolts in the side. In this step, you're going to slot in your shelf brackets into the rear frame. They go into the inner uprights, as shown in the video. To do this, simply line up the channel nuts and slide all of them down. Sometimes one might get a little bit stuck, so you might have to move back upwards a little bit and just straighten it up before it goes in. I would start by sliding them all in down to the bottom, and from there you can measure them up into position. We recommend, as a standard, 250mm between each shelf, but you can add more shelves in or change the heights as you need to depending on how your plants grow. Step, you need your 2060 BX and your S8 door frame. Note the door stop is going to be on the rear right and the door hinge hole is going to be on the left. Slot the frame over the bolts on either side. Might be easy to do one side at a time, and then tighten through the holes drilled in the bottom of the frame. In this step, you're going to need some zip ties, your mesh shelves, and your S8 lights. To start, place your S8 lights into the shelf brackets, with the wires going to the left as if you're looking at it from the front of the greenhouse. The S8 lights go into slots that have been pre-cut into the shelf brackets. Do this for all of your shelves. Then, over the top of them, place the mesh shelves themselves. They've also got little slots that they slot down into. The ones that would be parallel with you, as if you're looking at it from the front, will go on the top side of the shelf, and the horizontal ones will go below. You can use zip ties to hold the mesh shelf down onto the bracket to make sure that they don't move anywhere. There's pre-drilled holes for these. Then at the end, you can connect all of your lights up to the splitter that you installed earlier. In this step, we're going to install the heater cable. You should have 3 heater cables with your greenhouse. They're all the same length, so it doesn't matter which one they go into. You will be plugging them into output 1, 2 and 3 on your control unit, and then weaving them in between slots in the shelf itself. So if you take off the ties holding it together, you should be able to then slot them into the little narrow slots on the greenhouse. It's not an exact way of doing this, but what we recommend is starting from the back left and then working away to the front. So go round from the front in a big spiral, slowly getting towards the centre. Complete this for all 3 shelves. In this step, you're going to need your M5 nuts, your 50mm spacers, your M5x70 cap head bolts, and a Allen key. You'll also need your fan kit. So if we pick all of these up and go to the top of the greenhouse, I'll show you how to install them. The first thing to do is from the front of the greenhouse, slide the fans through into the rear, making sure that the vent is facing down. Then push it back through so the fans are on the inside of the greenhouse. Then from the outside, place the M5x70 bolts through the holes. Do this on all of them, so it should be held in place a little bit now. And over the top of them, you're going to put the 50mm spacers. Then over the open bolts, put the fan board with the connector facing towards the control unit so you can plug it in later. And then tighten everything down with the M5 nuts. Be careful not to over tighten these too much, as it could damage the fan board. In this step, you'll need your S8 lid and your S8 ridge plate. You'll also need M5x16 bolts and M5x30 bolts. Slot the ridge plate into the lid as shown in the video, with the square side of the ridge plate matching the open face side of the lid. To place the lid onto the greenhouse, simply put it onto the top of the rear extrusion. The little square bit underneath the ridge plate should slot into place in front of the horizontal bar on the rear panel of the greenhouse. Use M5x30s on the 2 inner holes and M5x16s on the 2 outer holes, and simply tighten them into place. To install the door, there's a few things you need to do first. You will need your 2020 DT, your door catch retainer, M5x8 bolts, an anti-twist plate, and some M5 channel nuts. We're going to make the door catch retainer first. Push them through in the orientation as shown in the video or in the diagram in your setup guide. With the powder coat, it might be a little bit tight, so you might just have to thread them through. Then on the rear of them, fit an M5 channel nut. This is what the finished product should look like. 2 M5x8 bolts going through the door catch retainer with 2 channel nuts. The next thing to do is to make the top door bar. For this, put in 2 channel nuts into the opposite face from the closed face of the top door bar, and then put in 2 M5x8 bolts into those channel nuts. Matching the door hinge washer that's facing downwards, so you've got the part of the anti-twist plate that sticks off the bottom, lock it into place on the opposite side of the hinge using the M5x8 bolts through the slots in the anti-twist plate. The next thing we're going to do is put the plastic hinge washers onto the door. The way it fits onto the greenhouse is with the handle on the right. What we're going to do is push over the plastic hinge washers over the door studs on the top and bottom of the door. Then slot the door down into the hinge washer in the front base extrusion. Back at the top of the greenhouse, what we're going to do is slot the hinge studs into the top door bar and then put some M5x30 bolts through the holes in the top of the top side assemblies. On the back of them, and fix them into place with an M5 penny washer and an M5 nylock. Make sure these are nice and tight. The next thing to do is to slide the door catch retainer up over the door handle. This means that when your door handle is closed, it will get locked into place as shown. Slide it up through the front extrusion on the front right, all the way up to where the door handle is, so it covers that little catch. Might be a little bit finicky at the bottom, but if you get them straight, it'll slide on up nicely. Then just tighten it in position. You can test it by trying to open and close your door. The last thing to do is to install bubble seal trim round the door. There should be enough to go all the way around the door. Push it in nice and tight. It doesn't really matter which way this goes. You will have to cut it down to length, so make sure you don't cut it too short.